Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. Carl Jung's words drift through time like a whisper carried on the wind, reaching us across decades to remind us of a truth we often avoid. To look outside is to become lost in projections, in the images we polish for the world, in the masks we wear to be accepted. But to look inside, truly inside, is to come face to face with the shadow, the repressed self, the uncomfortable truths buried within. And this, Jung tells us, is the beginning of awakening. But what does it mean to awaken? Imagine standing before a mirror in dim light. At first, you only see your reflection, familiar and ordinary. Yet as your eyes adjust, faint outlines appear, movements just at the edges, like shapes lingering behind the glass. They are part of you, and yet not. They belong to the shadow. The more you focus, the clearer they become. Flashes of envy, sparks of anger, the weight of selfish desires, quiet resentments you dare not admit even to yourself. These are the fragments we bury, the emotions we suppress, the impulses we exile to darkness. Most people spend their lives keeping the mirror dim, afraid of what might surface if they dared to light it fully. But Jung insisted that it is precisely there, in that darkness, that we must search. The shadow is not simply a collection of flaws. It is a container of lost energy, of unlived life, of the parts of ourselves we deny in order to appear respectable, moral, or virtuous. When left unattended, the shadow leaks out in harmful ways, in sudden outbursts of rage, in irrational judgments against others, in secret cravings and addictions. Yet if faced, if studied, it becomes a teacher. Consider the ambitious man who denies his selfish streak. Outwardly, he declares his goals noble, his work selfless. He convinces himself and others that he is sacrificing for the greater good. But beneath the surface, a hunger for recognition and control gnaws at him. Because he refuses to acknowledge this, the hunger twists his relationships, poisoning his interactions. Or the virtuous woman who prides herself on being morally upright. She is admired by her community, respected for her ethical stance. And yet, within her heart, a quiet contempt for those who stumble grows unchecked. Her virtue becomes armor, and behind it, judgment festers. These are not isolated stories. They are patterns, recurring dramas of the human psyche. Jung saw them repeatedly in his patients, but also in himself. The shadow does not discriminate. It comes for all of us. It is not a curse nor a punishment, but a law of the inner world. What we repress does not vanish. It waits. It gathers strength. And sooner or later, it will return, often through dreams, through conflicts, or through crises that shake us awake. Why should we bother looking inward when it feels so unsettling? Because ignoring the shadow keeps us divided, living only half a life. A person who spends all their energy denying selfishness may appear generous, but their giving is hollow, tinged with resentment. A person who clings to moral superiority may appear saintly, but their compassion is brittle, unable to embrace real human weakness. Without facing the shadow, we become actors in our own lives, performing roles, but never truly whole. Jung believed that true transformation does not come from chasing perfection, but from integration. And integration begins with honesty. To sit in stillness and say, yes, I feel envy. Yes, I harbor pride. Yes, I sometimes long for power. These admissions are not confessions of sin. They are acknowledgments of reality. And in acknowledging them, we begin to reclaim their energy. Because hidden within envy is the desire to grow, Within anger lies the power to protect. Within selfishness rests the seed of ambition that, if harnessed, can drive us to create and contribute. Yet this process is rarely comfortable. To meet the shadow is to dismantle the illusions we hold about ourselves. It feels like betrayal, like tearing down the carefully constructed image we have shown to others for years. And so, many resist. They cling to the outer dream, hoping the inner whispers will quiet. But the whispers grow louder. They appear in restless nights, in arguments with friends, in the hollow feeling that no amount of success or praise can satisfy. This is where Jung's invitation becomes urgent. He asks us, will you continue to look outward, chasing dreams, or will you dare to look inward and awaken? Awakening is not a single moment of enlightenment, but a gradual, sometimes painful process of admitting that you are not only light, but also shadow. That within your kindness lives cruelty. Within your loyalty lives betrayal. Within your love lives jealousy. And that this is not a flaw, but a fact of being human. It is in this paradox that the possibility of growth emerges. For only when you acknowledge the shadow can you learn from it. Only then can you transform the raw, destructive force into wisdom, creativity, and compassion. The shadow becomes your teacher because it refuses to let you live in lies. It demands honesty, authenticity, and courage. So, as we begin this journey together, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what parts of you do you most fear others discovering? What traits in others do you despise with intensity? These questions point to the edges of your shadow. They are not accusations. They are invitations. Invitations to step into the dim room, to light the mirror more brightly, and to finally meet the stranger who has always walked beside you, your hidden self. And as we walk deeper into Jung's vision, we will see how this shadow speaks through dreams, through encounters, and through life's crises, calling us again and again to awaken. For now, remember this: the shadow is not here to destroy you. It is here to guide you. The journey continues, and soon we will see how the unconscious sends messages in the most mysterious of ways through the world of dreams. Dreams arrive like uninvited guests, slipping past the guard of consciousness when we are most vulnerable. In the stillness of night, when our waking mind surrenders its grip, the unconscious seizes its chance to speak. Jung believed that dreams were not random nonsense, not simply echoes of daily life, but carefully crafted messages from the depths of the psyche. And often, these messages are painted in shadow. A man dreams of being chased through a forest by a beast with glowing eyes. He runs, stumbles, and wakes in a cold sweat. Another dreams of standing on a stage, frozen, unable to speak while the audience jeers. Someone else dreams of a dark basement, a door slightly ajar, with something breathing behind it. These are not just strange fragments. They are mirrors. Each dream reflects a hidden truth, a piece of the self buried and waiting. The beast is not some external monster. It is anger denied, desire ignored, or pain unacknowledged. The silence on stage is not random. It is the fear of exposure, the weight of unspoken words. And the basement, that is the unconscious itself, filled with all we have locked away. Dreams, Jung insisted, are the language of the unconscious. They are written in symbols, in imagery that bypasses logic. They speak directly to the soul, often disturbing us precisely because they reveal what we would rather not see. That is why shadow often shows up in dreams as threatening figures, hostile strangers, or dark animals. They embody qualities we disown. The cruel person in a dream may point to our own cruelty. The arrogant king may reveal our hunger for control. The weeping child may expose the vulnerability we suppress in daylight. Think of a dream like a letter sealed with wax. The conscious mind may want to throw it away, uncomfortable with its contents, but the unconscious insists. Open it, read it, learn. To ignore dreams is to discard vital guidance. To study them is to step into conversation with the deepest parts of ourselves. Jung described countless examples from his patients. One woman, who prided herself on her independence, dreamed repeatedly of a beggar following her, clinging to her sleeve. She dismissed it as silly, yet Jung urged her to reflect. The beggar was her neglected need for dependence, for intimacy. A part of her she rejected as weakness. The more she denied it, the more forcefully it returned in dreams, until she finally acknowledged that her independence had become a prison, isolating her from love. Another patient dreamed of drowning in a stormy sea. He awoke terrified, convinced it was an omen of death. Jung guided him deeper. The sea was not literal. It was the unconscious, vast and overwhelming, and the drowning was the ego's fear of being engulfed by emotions too long restrained. That man's waking life was built on rational control, a strict denial of feelings. The dream was not threatening to kill him. It was begging him to feel. In our own lives, dreams may not arrive with clear answers, but they tug at us. They leave impressions, a phrase, a face, a sensation of unease. These fragments are clues. A recurring dream may be the unconscious pounding at the door, refusing to be silenced. Jung encouraged recording dreams, sitting with their images, asking, why did this character appear? Why this place, this mood, this ending? The goal is not to decode like a puzzle, but to listen like a student. And here is the paradox. The shadow, which we fear most, often carries the key to growth. The nightmare that startles us awake is the unconscious trying to draw our attention to what we must face. Instead of running, Jung asks us to stay with the image, to ask, what part of myself is the monster? What gift lies hidden in the figure I dread? For in dreams, shadow is not just darkness, it is potential. Imagine if the man fleeing the beast turned to face it. What if he realized the glowing eyes were not malevolent, but a source of power he needed? Imagine if the woman silenced on stage discovered that her voice, though shaky, could command the crowd once she accepted her fear. Dreams invite us into these transformations. They provide the stage where shadow and self can finally meet. And so, when we wake from a troubling dream, we have a choice. We can dismiss it, shrug it off, and remain blind. Or we can see it as a gift, a teaching. To study dreams is to step into dialogue with the shadow. It is to allow the unconscious to become an ally, even when it speaks in the language of beasts and storms. Carl Jung himself often mined his own dreams for guidance. He did not stand apart from his theories. He lived them. His dreams of floods, of ancient figures, of terrifying encounters shaped his understanding of the psyche. He treated them not as fantasies, but as revelations. And in this, he modeled a path for us. To treat the dream world as sacred, as the classroom where the shadow teaches. So the next time you wake unsettled, instead of pushing the dream aside, sit with it. Ask what it wants from you. The answer may not come quickly, but the willingness to listen is already a step toward integration. For in dreams, the unconscious holds up its mirror. It says, "This too is you." And until you recognize it, you will never be whole. The shadow whispers in dreams, but it does not stop there. By day, it finds another stage, our relationships. The people we love, the ones we hate, the strangers who irritate us, each can become a reflection of the parts we deny. And in the next step of our journey, we will see how the shadow walks beside us, not only at night, but in every encounter we have. By daylight, the unconscious does not retreat into silence. Instead, it finds subtler ways to reveal itself. If dreams are the shadow's whispers in the night, relationships are its stage during the day. The way we respond to others, the admiration we feel, the irritation that sparks suddenly, the judgments we pass without hesitation. These are not only about the people in front of us. They are also mirrors, reflecting the qualities we carry, but prefer not to claim. Jung explained this through the concept of projection. What we deny in ourselves, we unconsciously project onto others. A man who disowns his aggression may find himself surrounded by people he calls hostile or domineering, blind to the fact that his own temper simmers beneath the surface. A woman who rejects her ambition may endlessly criticize others for being power-hungry, not realizing her words echo her own stifled desires. Relationships, therefore, become classrooms, sometimes uncomfortable ones, where the shadow forces us to look at ourselves. Think about the last time you felt an irrational dislike for someone. Perhaps their arrogance made your skin crawl, or their laziness filled you with contempt. Jung would ask, is it truly about them, or is it about you? Often, the very trait we cannot stand in another person is one we secretly harbor but refuse to acknowledge. The arrogant colleague may reveal our own hunger for recognition. The lazy neighbor may mirror our own wish to rest, a wish we label as weakness and deny ourselves. This does not mean every negative feeling is a projection. Sometimes people genuinely act in harmful ways. But Jung observed that our most intense emotional reactions, those disproportionate surges of anger or disdain, are usually shadow material. They reveal a part of us crying out to be seen. The shadow hides behind the faces of others, hoping we will notice. Even love can be a stage for shadow. The qualities we adore in another often reflect the unlived parts of ourselves. The artist we admire for their freedom may be pointing us toward our own suppressed creativity. The leader whose confidence inspires us may be mirroring the strength we refuse to claim. In both love and hate, the shadow uses others as a canvas, projecting what lies dormant within. Jung described this process vividly in his analysis of what he called the anima and animus, the inner feminine and inner masculine aspects of the psyche. A man may fall in love with a woman not only for who she is, but because she embodies his own repressed sensitivity, his capacity to feel deeply. A woman may idealize a man not only for his strength, but because he mirrors her own unclaimed decisiveness. The shadow sneaks into attraction, turning infatuation into a chance for self-discovery. But when these dynamics remain unconscious, relationships suffer. We blame others for traits that actually belong to us. We idolize partners only to later resent them when they fail to carry the burden of our projections. Friendships fracture, marriages collapse, workplaces become battlegrounds. And beneath the turmoil lies the same truth. The shadow is calling, using others as its messenger. Imagine a man who constantly argues with his boss, claiming she is manipulative and controlling. Perhaps she is, to some degree. But his fury burns hotter than the situation warrants. If he looks inward, he might see that he too has a controlling streak, one he suppresses, believing it unacceptable. His rage is less about her behavior than about the part of himself he refuses to acknowledge. Until he owns this, every authority figure he meets will trigger the same battle. Or picture a woman who despises gossipers, scorning them as shallow and cruel. She prides herself on being above such behavior. Yet in quiet moments, she catches herself craving stories, wanting to share secrets. The gossip she condemns in others is her own curiosity for human drama, a part of her she cannot integrate. Her judgment becomes the mask she wears, while the shadow watches silently from behind. The gift of relationships is that they refuse to let us escape. Unlike dreams, which we may forget, other people stand before us every day, pushing our buttons. Each conflict, each attraction, each irritation is an opportunity. If we are willing to ask, what does this say about me? What part of myself is hiding here? Then the shadow begins to reveal itself. This perspective does not mean we must accept harmful behavior or excuse mistreatment. It means that even in pain, we can learn. The betrayal of a friend may not only show us their flaws, but also highlight our own blindness to boundaries. The jealousy we feel toward a sibling's success may not only reveal our envy, but also remind us of the dreams we abandoned. Others become mirrors, showing us both wounds and possibilities, and the more we accept this, the less power projection holds. When we catch ourselves in the act, condemning arrogance, despising weakness, envying freedom, we can pause and ask, where does this live in me? Slowly, the mirror becomes clearer. The shadow stops hiding in others and begins to stand beside us, ready to be integrated. Relationships, then, are not just sources of joy or conflict. They are laboratories of the soul. In them, the unconscious paints our hidden self in bold strokes, hoping we will notice. The challenge is not to run from these reflections, but to study them, to let them teach us. And as we follow Jung's trail deeper, we will discover that the shadow does not only use dreams or relationships to reach us. Sometimes, it shakes the ground beneath our feet. It turns life itself into a storm, through crises, failures, and breakdowns, forcing us to confront what we would rather ignore. That is where we turn next. Life has a way of cornering us when we least expect it. We move forward with plans, ambitions, and carefully crafted identities, only to find ourselves derailed by events that feel cruel, unfair, or unbearable. These moments, loss of work, the end of a relationship, illness, betrayal, or simply the crushing sense that life has lost meaning, are more than accidents. Jung believed they are the unconscious breaking through, demanding that we face the shadow we have long denied. Crises, in this sense, are not only disasters, they are invitations. Picture a man who has built his entire life on achievement. His career is his identity, his promotions, his proof of worth. He prides himself on control, on being the one who never falters. Then suddenly, the company folds. He finds himself unemployed, uncertain, and stripped of the image he depended on. At first, he rages at the injustice, but beneath the anger lies a deeper truth. His ambition masked a fear of inadequacy, a fear he buried so deeply he never admitted it. Now, without the scaffolding of success, that fear rises to the surface. The crisis forces him to meet the shadow he has spent decades ignoring. Or imagine a woman in midlife who has spent years as the caretaker of everyone else. Her children, her spouse, her aging parents. She has built her identity on being selfless, always putting others first. Yet one day she wakes to a heavy emptiness, a realization that she has no idea who she is outside of her roles. Depression descends, not as an enemy, but as a messenger. The shadow she has denied, her own desires, her own ambitions, returns to claim its place. The crisis strips her of illusions, demanding she listen to the parts of herself she silenced. Jung observed that many people experience what he called the midlife crisis, though the phrase is now common in popular culture. To him, it was not a shallow cliché, but a profound turning point. In youth, we build the persona, the mask we wear to function in society. We pursue goals, chase recognition, play the roles expected of us. But at midlife, the unconscious begins to rebel. It whispers, "This is not all of you. There is more waiting in the depths." If we ignore it, the whisper becomes a shout, often through crisis. These crises are painful precisely because they tear down what we thought was solid. They reveal the fragility of our identities and force us to see what lies beneath. And what lies beneath is often shadow, the envy, selfishness, vulnerability, or longing we denied in order to appear strong or virtuous. Without the crisis, we might never look. But in the rubble of collapse, the shadow steps forward, saying, "Now will you listen?" The challenge is that most of us view crisis only as punishment. We see failure as shame, depression as weakness, loss as catastrophe. Jung invites us to look deeper. What if crisis is the psyche's way of correcting imbalance? What if breakdown is the soul's way of breaking through? Seen this way, every failure carries meaning. Every loss is a message. Every collapse is a doorway. Consider the man who loses his job. If he only rebuilds the same mask, chasing achievement again, he may miss the point. But if he dares to sit with the fear of inadequacy, to face the shadow of self-doubt, he may find a new kind of ambition, one not driven by fear, but by authenticity. Or the woman in depression. If she numbs herself and pushes forward, she may prolong her suffering. But if she listens to the shadow, she may discover her own voice, her own passions, and emerge stronger. This does not romanticize pain. Crises are brutal. They strip us bare, often leaving scars. But Jung argued that they also offer the possibility of rebirth. Like an alchemical process, the old self must dissolve before the new can emerge. And the dissolving always reveals the shadow, the raw material of transformation. The question, then, is how we respond. Do we cling desperately to the persona, trying to rebuild the mask? Or do we allow the crisis to teach us? Jung would say, "Let the shadow speak. Let the pain show you what you have hidden. Allow the failure to expose the illusions you carried." In this way, crisis becomes not just an ending, but a beginning. And perhaps you can recall a moment in your own life when the ground gave way beneath you. Did it not, in hindsight, reveal truths you had long avoided? Did it not, in some way, force you to grow? Jung would remind us that the psyche has its own intelligence, and the unconscious will use any means necessary, even suffering, to guide us toward wholeness. Crises are the shadow's loudest voice. They break through the defenses of the ego, demanding honesty. And though we resist, though we curse the timing, though we cry out in despair, something else stirs beneath the pain, the possibility of transformation. As we move deeper, we will see that the shadow does not only strip us down, it also offers gifts. If we are brave enough to stay with it, the darkness begins to reveal hidden treasures. Strength, creativity, empathy, resilience. This is the next step. Discovering how turning toward the shadow can give us back the parts of ourselves we never knew we lost. When we first encounter the shadow, it often feels like stepping into a cave. Cold, dark, and echoing with unfamiliar sounds. But if we linger, if we let our eyes adjust, something extraordinary happens. The darkness begins to reveal treasures hidden within it. What once felt threatening becomes a source of energy, creativity, and resilience. Jung believed this was one of the greatest paradoxes of the psyche. The very traits we fear most are the ones that can transform us when we accept them. Consider anger. When denied, it festers, spilling out in destructive ways, sarcasm, bitterness, or sudden outbursts. But when acknowledged and integrated, anger becomes strength. It sharpens boundaries, fuels protection, and ignites the courage to stand against injustice. Or think of selfishness. In denial, it poisons relationships, making generosity hollow. But if owned, selfishness teaches us self-respect, reminding us to care for our needs so we may give freely without resentment. Even envy, often despised, hides a gift. It points to what we long for, nudging us toward growth. The shadow, then, is not only the keeper of darkness, but also the guardian of hidden light. Jung compared this to alchemy, the medieval practice of transforming base metals into gold. To him, the shadow was the lead, the heavy, unrefined material of the psyche. By facing it, working with it, and not discarding it, we begin the alchemical process. Slowly, the lead becomes gold. The shadow becomes a source of creativity, empathy, and vitality. Integration is not about erasing flaws, but about transmuting them into something meaningful. Stories across cultures echo this truth. The hero descends into the underworld, facing monsters and darkness, only to return with treasure. Persephone is taken into the realm of Hades and emerges as the goddess of spring. In each myth, descent into darkness precedes renewal. Jung saw these myths as reflections of the inner journey. To enter our own underworld, the shadow, is to discover the gifts that lie beneath. In practical life, this can be seen in countless ways. A man who once feared his vulnerability may, after embracing it, become a source of comfort to others, offering empathy he never knew he possessed. A woman who denied her ambition may, upon claiming it, step into leadership with authenticity, inspiring others with her courage. What once appeared as weakness or flaw transforms into strength. But the path is not quick. Integration requires patience. It asks us to observe without judgment, to sit with discomfort, to resist the urge to immediately fix or erase what we find. Instead, we must learn to listen. The shadow speaks through subtle cues, through envy that burns, anger that erupts, shame that lingers. Each is a signal pointing to energy trapped within. By staying with these feelings, by tracing them back to their roots, we uncover what they want to teach us. Art often becomes a natural outlet for this transformation. Many great works are born from shadow. Poets write from heartbreak, painters from turmoil, musicians from despair. Their creations resonate because they transmute personal darkness into collective beauty. Jung encouraged patients to draw, paint, or write their dreams and visions, not to escape the shadow, but to give it form. In expression, the shadow's raw energy flows into creativity instead of chaos. Even in daily life, the gifts of the shadow emerge. When we accept our own flaws, we become less judgmental of others. Compassion grows. We see that everyone carries burdens, everyone hides parts of themselves, and this shared humanity softens our hearts. By facing our own darkness, we gain the empathy to walk with others in theirs, and resilience too is born in this process. A person who has faced despair no longer fears it in the same way. Having survived the storm within, they carry a quiet strength, a steadiness that cannot be faked. They know that darkness does not destroy, it teaches. And so, they become guides for others, living proof that the shadow can be transformed. This is why Jung insisted that the shadow is not our enemy. It is a teacher. It is the keeper of power we have forgotten, of creativity we have neglected, of compassion we have withheld. When we dare to step into the cave, we discover not only what frightens us, but also what can heal us. Think back to your own life. Have you ever grown stronger because of a struggle? Have you ever discovered talents or courage you did not know you had until you faced failure or pain? That is the shadow revealing its gifts. The question is whether we will keep running from it, or whether we will walk toward it with openness. As our journey with Jung continues, the final step comes into view. Understanding that the shadow is not merely something to integrate, but a lifelong companion, a mentor guiding us toward wholeness. The greatest lesson is not just that darkness holds treasure, but that light and darkness must walk together. And in that balance lies our true self. By now, the shape of the shadow has grown clearer. It is no longer only the frightening figure at the edge of dreams or the hidden resentment in our relationships. It has revealed itself as teacher, guide, and companion. To Jung, this was the essential truth. The shadow is not an intruder in our lives, but a part of us, carrying lessons that no outer teacher could provide. When we begin to accept this, the path of wholeness, what Jung called individuation, opens before us. Individuation is the process of becoming who we truly are, not by cutting away what we dislike, but by integrating it. The light we cherish and the darkness we avoid must both have a place at the table. Only then do we step out of illusion and into authenticity. To deny the shadow is to live half a life. To embrace it is to live a full one. Imagine wholeness as a circle. Many of us live only in one arc of that circle. The traits we approve of, the faces we show to the world. But the other arc, hidden in shadow, remains unseen. We may call it anger, envy, pride, weakness, or desire, but whatever the label, it is ours. To integrate the shadow is to complete the circle, to walk in both arcs without fear. This is why Jung often used the language of paradox. He said that true maturity is not about choosing light over darkness, but holding both together. It is to say, I am kind and I am cruel. I am generous and I am selfish. I am loyal and I am capable of betrayal. To accept these contradictions is not to fall into despair, but to discover depth. We are no longer bound to fragile masks. We become real, textured, whole. Consider again the ambitious man who denied his selfishness. If he integrates that shadow, he may channel his drive into authentic leadership, no longer needing to pretend he is only selfless. He learns to balance ambition with humility, selfish desire with contribution. The woman who hid her contempt beneath virtue may, by facing it, discover compassion that is no longer brittle but strong, able to embrace human imperfection, including her own. Their growth comes not from denying the shadow, but from letting it sit beside them. The shadow as mentor works subtly. It does not lecture, it reveals. It shows us our projections, our dreams, our crises, and asks us to pay attention. It insists that the qualities we fear most are the very ones that can complete us. And when we listen, life begins to shift. We grow less afraid of conflict, less judgmental of others, more willing to admit our flaws. We begin to see that every encounter, every irritation, every failure is not only a challenge, but a lesson. This shift changes how we view others as well. Once we know our own shadow, we see theirs with softer eyes. We no longer need to attack or condemn because we recognize the shared struggle. We know that behind the polished surfaces of every person lies darkness they wrestle with, just as we do. This recognition breeds compassion and humility. It allows us to walk with others, not above them. Jung often warned against the illusion of perfection. Those who claim to be all light, all virtue, all goodness, are often those most trapped by their shadows. Their denial becomes dangerous, spilling out unconsciously in destructive ways. The one who insists he is pure may secretly act with cruelty. The one who claims she is selfless may quietly manipulate others. But the person who admits complexity, the mixture of dark and light, becomes trustworthy. For they are honest, grounded, real. In this way, the shadow teaches authenticity. It strips away the need to pretend. It frees us from the exhausting task of hiding parts of ourselves, and it gives us back the energy we once spent in denial. That energy can now fuel creativity, passion, and love. The shadow, once feared, becomes a source of vitality. But the shadow's greatest lesson is humility. It reminds us that we are not gods, not perfect beings, but human. To be human is to be flawed, conflicted, and unfinished. And yet, in that unfinishedness lies beauty. For it means we are always capable of growth, always invited to learn. The shadow does not condemn us. It educates us. It shapes us into deeper, wiser, more compassionate people. So when Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes," he was pointing toward this lifelong journey. To look inside is to awaken not once, but again and again, each time we dare to face another layer of shadow. Each awakening brings us closer to wholeness, closer to a life lived honestly and fully. And now, as our exploration comes to its close, we can see the arc of the journey. The shadow as hidden self, as dream messenger, as relational mirror, as crisis caller, as gift giver, and finally, as teacher of wholeness. What once appeared as enemy now stands revealed as mentor. And the question is no longer whether the shadow exists. It is whether we will walk with it or against it. For those who choose to walk with it, the shadow becomes a silent companion, always reminding, always teaching. It is not easy. It will test us, unsettle us, confront us. But in return, it offers authenticity, resilience, and peace. And so, we arrive at the heart of Jung's message. The shadow is the teacher we spend our lives avoiding, only to discover it was the one we needed most. The shadow within us is not a pit to fall into, but a staircase to climb. Each step downward into anger, envy, fear, or shame is also a step upward into strength, creativity, compassion, and authenticity. What begins as descent becomes ascent, as the very darkness we resist reveals itself as the ground of our growth. Carl Jung's reminder echoes once more. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. To look inside is not to find only light, but to discover the entire spectrum of what it means to be human. To awaken is to face both radiance and darkness, to accept the paradox that we are at once noble and flawed, capable of great love and of great harm. This acceptance does not diminish us. It deepens us. It makes us humble, honest, and compassionate. We no longer need to pretend or to judge. We can walk through life with a steady gaze, knowing that every person we meet is wrestling with their own shadow, just as we are. This recognition unites us in our humanity. The invitation, then, is simple yet profound. Do not run from the shadow. The next time you feel envy, pause and ask, what is it showing me about my longings? The next time anger rises, consider, what strength is it calling me to claim? The next time shame lingers, wonder, what truth about myself have I yet to embrace? These moments are not punishments. They are lessons, each carrying the potential to bring us closer to wholeness. In the end, the shadow is not here to haunt us. It is here to heal us. It is the teacher we did not choose but desperately need. The guide that will not flatter us but will always tell us the truth. And when we have the courage to listen, we find that the darkness we feared contains the very light we sought. So let us remember, the shadow is not our enemy. It is our companion on the path of becoming whole. To face it is to awaken. To awaken is to grow, and to grow is to live fully. And in this way, Carl Jung's wisdom continues to call us inward, where the greatest teacher of all time still waits, our own hidden self.